for your presence and participation, and together, let's continue to build a more inclusive, equitable and representative Australia for generations to come. Now, I would like to invite on the stage Pallavi Jain from the Australia Today for the question and answer session. Stage is all yours.
Good evening, everyone. I've been handed some questions by the community, and we hope you will, address these questions. So the first question, Andrew, that I have for you is about the swastika. Now, the swastika is an ancient Hindu symbol for well-being, peace, prosperity, but it's wrongly conflated with the Nazi Hackenkreuz in the Western discourse. So, this causes distress in the community sometimes. So, would your government commit to launching a national awareness campaign with regards to educating Australians about the cultural and spiritual significance of the swastika? And it is not the Hackenkreuz.
This is a really, really important point. I think it's incredibly important that people can differentiate between the different ways that symbol has been used. And I think for all Australians, it's important that Australians are educated about that symbol. And that symbol has deep, deep meaning for so many members of the Indian diaspora in Australia. And it certainly should be recognised as an important symbol for the community. So for me, to answer your question, I think it's incredibly important that Australians do understand what that symbol really means and what it means to particularly South Asian communities, and that it's recognised in that light and not put in a light where it doesn't belong. And that, I think, if we get to that level of understanding, I think we're a much better nation and a much better multicultural nation.
The first question that I wanted to ask you was with regards to the swastika. The swastika is a sacred symbol for well-being and prosperity and peace for Hindus and Jain and Buddhists as well. Unfortunately, in Western discourse, that symbol has been conflated with the Hackenkreuz, which is the Nazi hate symbol. So, that causes distress in the community. So, would your government commit to, say, launching a national awareness campaign with regards to swastika and its cultural and spiritual importance?
I think the need for education and understanding is always so important to how we treat each other in our everyday lives. I know that during this campaign, recently, I took a friend of mine to the Murugan temple, and if I had not invited her during the course of this campaign, she would never have experienced that before. And her eyes were really open to a lot of things that she'd never observed. I know that the Hindu religion is one of peace and compassion and service to others, and the way that the Nazi symbol has been used is for hatred. And I can only imagine how hurtful that has been for our Jewish community, but also for our South Asian communities who see that symbol differently. And I think that it's really important that we work from a grassroots level up to make sure that we all understand each other and our cultures. There's such a room for growth and development and knowledge, especially in an area like Parramatta, which is so diverse and multicultural. It's more important places here than anywhere else.
The second question is about the reporting by ABC and SBS. I mean, there have been concerns in the community, generally speaking, that these are like very powerful, publicly funded organizations, and they have been intentionally kind of cherry picking information and weaponizing that information to create an anti-India and anti-Hindu narrative. So the question really is that and they intentionally, or maybe out of ignorance, don't highlight, say, the inclusive principles of Hinduism, like Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, or the phenomenal scientific rationalism, which impress the likes of Charlton and Tesla. So how will your government ensure that ABC and SBS uphold their obligation for impartial reporting, and will your party implement an independent oversight mechanism to hold publicly funded media organizations accountable for how they report?
Absolutely. Well, listen to this. we have to be respectful of other nations, and we have to reflect on other nations in a way that is fair. Now, I have written many times about the success of India over the last many decades. I think that we need to make sure that all Australians are aware of that success. We need to make sure that there is recognition for the achievements of India, and that India is not unfairly characterised or demonised in the public discourse. Let me say this. When there was what I thought was some reporting which was not balanced, I called that out. And I don't think many other Australian politicians did. I called that out. When I didn't think it was balanced, I called it out. When the company Remitly put the Indian flag on the floor, on the ground at Parramatta railway station, I wrote to them and I said, that is disrespectful. And to Remitly's credit, they took it off. So for me, Pallavi, it's about leading by example. It's about paying countries the respect that they deserve, about not unfairly demonising them, and about making sure that we are balanced in our reporting of those countries. Now, the ABC and the SBS, they operate under a charter. And that charter governs the way that they do their reporting, and it governs their relationship with government. I think for me, government's role is to lead from the front. And you have seen that leadership in this term of Parliament. You have seen Anthony Albanese, the first Prime Minister of Australia to visit India twice in 1 year. You have seen our focus on India bilaterally. We have had more ministerial visits to India than any other country. That is the sign of our focus on building this relationship. So for me, Pallavi, it's about showing that leadership, not just talking about it, but showing it. Showing the prioritisation that we give India, and I think you can see that in the Albanese Labor government.
The second question, Katie, is with regards to the reporting by ABC and SBS, both public broadcasters receiving hundreds of millions of dollars. And there's this perception in the community that they are doing, one-sided anti-India, anti-Hindu, reporting, that they cherry-pick information, weaponize it, and they omit, principles like Vasudev Kutumbakam, which is the world is one family, and many other phenomenal aspects. And basically do what some may call propaganda. So how will your government ensure that ABC and SBS uphold their obligations for impartial reporting, and will your party implement an independent oversight mechanism to hold these public broadcasters accountable for basically what's their job, which is fair and impartial reporting?
Well, it's so important in this information age that reporting from any media organisation is impartial and unbiased, particularly when it's taking advantage of public funding. There are already mechanisms in place and they need to be followed and upheld. There is no place for that kind of bias, and a strong government will stand up for those kind of issues.
The next question, Andrew, is related to Hindu hate crimes and temple vandalism. Unfortunately, we have seen a number of attacks and vandalism across Australia on temples. Unfortunately, no arrest has been made as yet. Now, in light of the recent laws which have been introduced to counter anti-Semitism, would your government consider something on those lines, for laws against Hindu hate as well?
Well, again, this is a really important issue. There is no room in Australia for Hindu phobia of any kind. Hindu people should be able to practice their faith in peace just like every other community in Australia. But I'll tell you one thing, again, talk is cheap. But on the day when in my community there was a Hindu temple that was vandalised, the BAPS temple in Rose Hill. When that mandir was vandalised, when it had hateful words sprayed on the outside of the mandir, I didn't talk, I acted. I got straight in my car, I drove down to the BAPS temple, I picked up a paintbrush, and in solidarity with that community, I started painting that off myself. And for me, that's leadership. Anyone can talk, but you need to be there with the community, showing with your own hands and your own actions where your heart really lies. And on that day, it was a no-brainer for me, because there is no place in Australia for you.
The next question is with regards to anti-Hindu hate crime and temple vandalism. Now, there have been several incidents of temples being vandalized across Australia over the last couple of years. Not a single arrest has been made so far. In light of the recent laws with regards to anti-Semitism that have been implemented, will your government commit to, maybe enacting similar laws when it comes to anti-Hindu hate as well? And what can be done to address this issue?
There is no place in our society for that kind of racial discrimination, and the Liberal Party stands very firm on this. Our We Believe statement, which is the foundation of our party, supports and upholds the right to freedom of expression of religion. It is one of the most important things to us, and you will have observed over the term of the last government that it is the Liberal Party who has stood up firmly against hate crimes and will continue to do so.
The next question is regarding permanent long-term visa for parents. Now this is a long-term issue, and there are delays and complications with regard to the visa process. So will your government simplify and expedite the process for parents, for permanent residents and citizens from India? And can you commit to creating a permanent long-term parent visa category?
Yeah. Look, I know how important this issue is for so many people. I do a lot of door knocking during the day, so I knock on lots of doors during the day, Monday to Friday, and very frequently I'll be knocking on a door and mum and dad will be at work and it'll be a grandparent at home. And I know that's a very special relationship, and that relationship with parents is so fundamental in all of our cultures, and particularly for many people from the Indian diaspora. My dad is here tonight. Say hi to my dad. When you're on the campaign trail, you spend a lot of time away from your family because you're starting early in the morning, you're working late at night. So I just want to thank my dad in particular for being with me on the campaign trail. And as much as I working so hard, it's really nice for me to have my dad with me. Oh, and thank you for giving me the chair as well. But I think that's my chair. Let me get back to the point. Parent visas. This is a very challenging issue, and the wait times have blown out. There is no question about that. I assure you that the government is thinking through this issue. I am not going to announce tonight what the solution to that issue is, but I assure you that the Minister for Immigration has been working through this issue, is consulting on it, and knows that it is a big problem. I assure you of that. But I will tell you one thing. There is a real choice in this election. A real choice. And that is, Peter Dutton has said that he will cut immigration by 80%. Now, that is a huge reduction. A massive reduction. And the question is, where is that going to come from? Where is that big reduction going to come from? What are the categories that are going to get reduced? And not uncharacteristically, there isn't a lot of detail. Just as there isn't a lot of detail on the nuclear policy, just as there isn't a lot of detail on the gas policy, there isn't a lot of detail on the migration policy. But the question we need to be asking is, where are those visa cuts going to come from? Which categories? Because there are a lot of categories that are actually very difficult to cut. Very difficult to cut. And if there are lots of categories that are very difficult to cut, then the question is, how are they going to cut to get to that level? And the answer will have to be that they completely destroy lots of visa categories that currently exist. So I think our government has a balanced approach. We are working through these issues, we are conscious of them, we are managing them, we have a balanced approach. On the other side, you have an extreme approach. An extreme approach. An extreme approach that has no details in it. So I think there's some very legitimate questions about how those targets are going to be achieved and what that means for many of these topics, including the way that we deal with important visa classes like this one.
I think the next question is regarding the permanent long-term visa for parents of Indian migrants. Now, this is an issue which is close to the community's heart because there are significant delays and complications in, parents who want to visit, citizens and permanent residents of Indian origin. So will your government look at simplifying, these visa processes and can you commit to, say, enacting a permanent long-term parent visa category for the community?
So, as the Liberal candidate for Parramatta, over the last few months I've been out door knocking and meeting as many people as I can, and this issue has actually come up many times, particularly from women who talk to me about how much help it would be if their parents could come over and assist with the children. And it's something that our leader also acknowledges. Just 2 days ago he said that parent visas are extremely important in our society. So that is something that I would definitely be advocating for and happy to be speaking to our ministers about.
Andrew, again, the next question is a sensitive one. It is about allocation of land for a Hindu cremation ground. Again, this is an important thing. And a proposal has been made to allocate 5 acres from a larger 27-acre burial site. So, this is specifically for a Hindu cremation ground where, performance of last rites can be done according to Hindu customs. So will your government fast track and support this proposal?
Look, again, actions speak louder than words. Last year, year before last, I was the one who took members of the Hindu Council to Parramatta Council to meet with the Mayor and meet with other officials to talk about exactly this challenge. The need for us to create the space and opportunities for appropriate rites and rituals to be conducted in Parramatta. I created that meeting, I took the Hindu Council, and we started working on a solution for how we are going to create that space right here in Parramatta. For me, it's not about words, it's about doing. And we have started that journey and started those conversations. There's more to do, but unquestionably this is important. In the last election, I made a very important commitment. That was a commitment to culturally appropriate aged care. And we gave support to Sri On Care, because we recognise that there is a growing need in diaspora communities for different kinds of services, including aged care, including the types of rites and rituals that you mentioned in your question. So we're not talking about this, we are acting on it. We gave Sri On Care $6.5 million, we're working on other solutions in aged care so that the growing older population of Indian Australians has the kind of aged care that they want. A place where they can go and get the food that they're used to. They can be spoken to in a language that they are familiar with. They can be around the cultural festivals and rituals and rites that they grew up with. These things are important in aged care. And our government has not just talked about it, we've put money into it and we're supporting it further. And similarly with rites and rituals, we've taken direct action working with Parramatta Council to make progress in this area. Again, on issue after issue, friends, working with you, listening to you, understanding the needs of the community. In the last 3 years, we have done a lot together, and these are some good examples of that progress, and that's why you can trust me for the future to keep delivering for you. It's not words, the record is there. The record is there, and we've got a lot more to do.
One question is regarding advancing equity in community language education. So according to the government, it indicates that Hindi and other Indian languages are receiving significantly less funding from some other community languages. And because of this disparity, it affects the ability of public primary school to offer instructions in those languages, limiting access for students from Indian backgrounds. So how will your party ensure like a fair and equitable funding, and will you commit to reviewing and adjusting concerns regarding this so that support for linguistic and cultural needs of Indian Australian communities can be looked at?
Well, I think you can see our commitment already to this kind of initiative. We were the first party to commit to the $8.5 million for the Hindu school. And in terms of specific funding in other schools, that is something that I would advocate for and be talking to the Minister of Education about.
There's some concerns that people have raised regarding the appointment at CARE, which is the Centre for Australia-India Relations, and they raised this question of how the appointments are made, and there don't seem to be quantifiable, tangible, changes on the ground. So, is that something that your government would look at, like the appointments and what is being done?
Absolutely. If there's a concern raised by the community, my job as the member is to consider that, advocate for what you need, and get the response that the community deserves.
And one more question is regarding international students. Now, there's been a lot of talk about this, linking. I mean, there's some distress in the community because the media has chosen to link, the international students to the housing issue and many other such things. And because, Indian students are the second highest in Australia behind the Chinese. So this is an issue that impacts the community directly. What is your take on this issue?
My take is international students make a huge contribution to our community. Like I was saying, it's not exactly the same, but my story of coming from the country and coming to Parramatta, I studied here and I worked in a small business here, and students coming to Parramatta from other places, they are contributing to our economy, to our society, to our cultural initiatives, and I think our international students, they have a really positive and important role in our community, particularly in areas like Parramatta, which is so multicultural.
The next questions around bullying and religious discrimination in schools. I mean, there are increasing reports of Indian origin students and Hindu students who are being subjected to bullying and discrimination in Australian public schools. So, from a federal level, how will the government ensure that there's a safe and inclusive environment for the students, and will you commit to introducing a national anti-racism and religious tolerance program in schools to ensure that bullying based on ethnicity and religion is addressed proactively and effectively?
I mean, it's a terrifically important issue. Bullying in schools is something, as a parent, I've got 3 children, I worry a lot about it. And now we don't just have to worry about physical bullying on the playground, we have to worry about cyberbullying online. And now our kids can't just leave the playground, come home and be safe in our homes because they're on their devices, they're getting messages from their friends, there are WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups and Instagram groups, all of which are opportunities not just for social connection, but for bullying. That's why the Albanese government has done something which is a world first. A world first. We are taking social media away from young children. We are making sure that young children are not exposed to those types of platforms which can bring a range of different harms, including bullying. To give kids the opportunity to be kids, to have a childhood, to be able to go home and relax and feel safe after school. This is a world-first initiative of the Albanese Labor government to make the online spaces that our kids are in safer. Now, bullying is completely unacceptable in our schools. No child from an Indian background should experience bullying, just like no child from any other background should experience bullying. It's something that's very important, I know, to the state government. Obviously, most of the schooling system is run by the state government, but certainly the federal government and the state government are working together to make our schools safe and to make sure that our kids are safe in the playground and online.
The next question is related to languages, advancing equity in community language education. So government data indicates that Hindi and other Indian languages actually receive significantly less funding compared to other community languages. And because of this disparity actually affects the ability of public primary schools to offer instruction in those languages, which limiting access for schools from Indian background. So, will you commit to reviewing and adjusting current funding allocations to address these disparities and support the linguistic and cultural needs of the Indian Australian community?
Yeah, terrific question. This is something that's very important to me. I visit a lot of community language schools, and Parramatta is actually home to a huge number of these schools. And I go there on the weekends, and you see young people who are learning, in many cases, their mother language. From Monday to Friday, they're in instruction in a normal school, and on the weekend, they have an opportunity to get in touch with their heritage. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I always love going to community language schools and seeing young people working so hard, connecting with their heritage. The Albanese Labor government has been supporting community language schools. We think it's a really important part of Australian culture to have young people with the ability not just to learn English, but to stay in touch and learn their mother tongue. That's why we've been so supportive of community language schools. I know the state government has been supportive of making sure that we have the ability to take lots of those languages right through to the HSC. There have been a number of languages, particularly subcontinental languages, which have now been recognised as full HSC subjects, which I think is a positive step forward as well. In relation to your question about funding, I'll look into that to see what those disparities are and work with the Education Minister to see what needs to be done to address those disparities.
Thank you for that. The next question is that it's great that the India-Australia relationship has seen a lot of milestones, but where do we go from here, and how would you harness the Indian diaspora in taking this relationship further?
First of all, I agree with the premise of your question, both parts of the premise of your question. I agree that the Australia-India relationship is strong, but as I said in my earlier remarks, I also agree that it could be stronger. But we have a great foundation upon which to work. Australia has, with India, we have a security arrangement through the Quad. We have an annual leaders meeting. We have an annual foreign and defence ministers meeting, and we have an economic framework. Do you know there is only one other country in the world that has all of those pieces of architecture with India? Only one other country, and that country is Japan. Australia and Japan are the only two countries that have annual leaders meeting, annual foreign and defence ministers meeting, and an economic and security arrangement. That puts Australia, I think, right in the prime position to capitalise on those pieces of architecture. And how do we capitalise on them? Well, as I said, by using the Indian diaspora in Australia. That's why we created the Centre for Australia-India Relations. And Tim Thomas, who's the CEO of that centre, he says something that I really love. Tim says, when we think about our economic relationship, we need to recognise that the real experts are members of the Australian Indian diaspora. They understand the relationships, they understand how to open markets, they understand how to build new trading relationships, they understand the cultural sensitivities, they understand the market opportunities. And I think there's a lot that we are doing through the Centre for Australia-India Relations to harness the power of the diaspora to build that relationship even stronger. But again, I'll say this to you, friends. These aren't words. The Albanese government put $30 million into that centre in order to make this a reality, in order to harness the power of the diaspora, in order to use that as an asset in the relationship to build it. We're not talking, we're acting.
Andrew, now the next question from the crowd is actually about care. The question is that how are the appointments done at Centre for Australia-India Relations, and why is there no person in care who was part of the Modi Albanese reception? And also that that there's no quantifiable, tangible results as yet seen visible on the ground.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the appointments. I know that the chair was appointed by the minister. And I think the CEO was appointed by the chair. I can look into the process of appointments more deeply. But look, I think that CARE has real runs on the board. I think the first thing they did that really impressed me was locating themselves in Parramatta. That really impressed me. That was a good start. And I think they did that for one important reason. They did that because they wanted to be connected to the diaspora. That's why they didn't locate themselves in the CBD of Sydney, or in Melbourne, or in Canberra. They didn't want to be hanging out with politicians all the time. They wanted to be closer to the diaspora. That's why CARE accepted the invitation to come to Parramatta. And I think they've made real achievements. Real achievements recognising many of the success stories in the Australian Indian diaspora, building strong economic links with trade missions, with investment programs, by strengthening the relationship, for people-to-people relationships, investing in some academic institutions, doing research on the relationship, points for improvement. I think CARE has some real success stories, and I think we should celebrate it and support it.
Also, there's been a lot of discussion on international students, and the media, they're been into housing and things like that, and that's obviously impacted Indian students because they're the second largest group of students from any country. So, what is your take on this issue?
I think that Australia's international education system is a great benefit to our country. A great benefit. It's not without challenges, it's not without problems, but it is a great benefit to our country. And I think it's an industry that we need to fix, but an industry that we need to be proud of and to grow. And it's an industry that I think offers huge opportunities to Australia. There's no question that there are some practices in that industry that do need to be fixed. There are some issues in the industry, and the government is certainly working on those issues. But the core of that industry, to bring ambitious young people from around the world to Australia, to pick up skills, to come here, and ultimately for many of those people to contribute to Australia over the long term, that is a good thing. And that's why I think we've been trying to get the balance right in terms of fixing and strengthening the industry. And again, I worry a lot about the promise from the other side of politics. That steep cut in migration numbers. Like, how is that going to be achieved? And it seems obvious to me that one way that will be achieved will be by real damage to the international student market in Australia. In fact, the level of cuts that would be required in that market to meet that overall target is staggering. And I know that I've spoken to a lot of people in the vocational education industry in Australia who are horrified by what those cuts will mean. Again, there's been no detail. Peter Dutton has not provided any detail about how that's going to be achieved. But because international students is such a big part of that temporary migration program, it has to be in the crosshairs. It has to be in the firing line. And I think there's a lot of concern amongst education operators and amongst international students about what that will mean for them.
Andrew, there's another question which is about Parramatta actually, that what is your vision for Parramatta in terms of education, transport, safety, business and jobs?
Yeah, well look, I always say one thing. Is this the last question? Not that I want to finish, but it would be a nice point to finish on. I always say one thing, friends. The thing I always say is that the future of Parramatta is the future of Australia. The future of Parramatta is the future of Australia. And what do I mean by that? I mean that Parramatta is everything the future of Australia should be. It is diverse. It is ambitious. It is community connected. It is optimistic. So for me, I want Parramatta to be a shining light for what the future of Australia will be. An ambitious, optimistic, diverse place that people travel to from across the city, from across the nation, and from across the world to build a better life. A better life for themselves, a better life for their families. That's what I want Parramatta to be. A global city that attracts talent and communities from right across the world. And how do we get there? Well, we get there by delivering the basics, by making sure that we have a strong education system that attracts people, gives people a good education, a good start in life. And our government has invested in every level of that education system. Big childcare investments, fully funding our public schools, free TAFE, new places at universities right here in Parramatta at the University of Western Sydney, cutting the HECS debt. At every single level, the Albanese Labor government is investing in education because we know that is the biggest ladder of opportunity we have. That's number one, making Parramatta a place where we have the best education opportunities available. Number two, we need to make sure that Parramatta's healthcare system is second to none. How many people here have waited for ages at the emergency room at Westfield? 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. How many people here have spent the last decade seeing that it is harder and harder to see a bulk billed doctor? Many of us. Well, again, the Albanese government is fixing these challenges. We've installed our new urgent care clinic in Westfield so that people don't have to wait so long to see a doctor late at night or on the weekend when their kids have an injury on Saturday sport. We've been investing in GPs to make sure it's easy to see a doctor and easier to see a doctor for free. We've been fixing local infrastructure. We've been upgrading local parks. We have been making Parramatta the best place to live, work and raise a family. And to me, that is the vision. That's the vision for Parramatta. But it's not just the vision for Parramatta, it's the vision for the whole of Australia. And I think we can lead the nation. Every year, Australia looks more and more like Parramatta. And it's only going in that direction. Ambitious, diverse, optimistic, and if we can prove that that works here, the future for the whole of Australia will be bright.
Just last two questions, Katie. We spoke about the attack in Kashmir, India, which is horrific terror attack. Now, would your government, there are some countries that are known for indulging in state sponsor of terrorism. Would your government consider sanctioning those countries that do so? And if there are individuals found linked to terror attacks, would the government take action against them even here?
Well, the Liberal Party has been very firm and stronger than the current government in their condemnation of terrorist attacks, and that is what I would expect to see under the leadership of government.
And just last question, India-Australia relations have, become a lot better in the last decade or so. They've gone from strength to strength. Where do we go from here, and how do you see the role of the Indian diaspora in forging that relationship even stronger?
Well, as I said before, I recognise, acknowledge and celebrate the contributions the Indian community has made to Parramatta and Australia on a broader scale. And I think that you can see in the culture of our government how the Liberal Party has embraced Indian and Australian relations, and that would continue. But I also think that these relationships grow from the ground up, and as a local member of the community, I've spent more than 2 decades in this area, spending time with the Indian community, and that's what we really need to do, just be building our relationships from the ground up. And obviously, I've recognised the importance of the Indian community in Australia and would continue to foster that relationship.
Katie, thank you so much for your time. Thanks again for making time for us.
And I just wanted to say thank you so much, and I really appreciate your patience with me being a little emotional this evening. It was difficult coming from a funeral, but I wanted to make sure that I took the time to come and address the questions that the community has. And I also wanted to acknowledge the organisers of this fantastic forum. It is really great to have everyone in a room together and to be able to ask the questions that you need answers to. Also, my details are all over Parramatta. I put my personal phone number on every single leaflet that's gone out, so if anyone wants to ask me any questions, you know how to contact me, and I would love to talk to you.
We just have time for one more. We all heard about the attack in India, the terror attack in the morning today. What would be your government's response? And what I would like to ask you is that there are countries that indulge in state sponsorship of terrorism. Would Australia consider sanctioning these countries? And if there are individuals living in Australia who are found to be connected with these terror groups, will action be taken against them as well?
Well, the Prime Minister has been very strong on this in the last 24 hours. He's put out, I think, a very strong statement, a statement that I very strongly support. And that is an utter condemnation of terrorism in this instance and in all its forms. Australia does have strong global anti-terrorism links. We do work with other countries around the world. We have sanctioned people involved in this type of activity in the past. We have a program to do that, and we are always looking at that program to see when it is appropriate and taking advice from our security agencies about when it is appropriate to continue that program. So absolutely, the Albanese Labor government has been incredibly strong on this issue, and the tragic events of the last 24 hours are yet another example of why we need to be so vigilant in the global fight against terrorism, including rooting out any links to terrorism that exist here in Australia.
Dr. Andrew Charlton, thank you for taking all these questions and good luck with it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Andrew Charlton, for listening patiently to all the questions and for your thoughtful responses and, of course, your best service to public.